She thought he was just a poor, crippled beggar. Every day, she shared her little food with him. But one morning, everything changed. Who was this man? Why had he chosen her? And what secret had he been hiding all along? Sit back as we dive into this heart-touching and shocking tale. The story of a poor girl named Esther and a beggar everyone laughed at. Esther was just 24 years old. She sold food in a small wooden stall by the roadside in Lagos. The stall, built from worn planks and rusted iron sheets, stood beneath a large tree where many people gathered to eat. She didn't have much. Her slippers were worn thin, and her dress was patched in several places. Yet Esther was always smiling. No matter how tired she was, she greeted every customer kindly. "Good afternoon, sir." "You're welcome," she would say with a warm smile. Every morning, she rose before the sun to cook rice, beans, and yam porridge. Her hands worked quickly, but her heart carried a quiet sadness. She had no family. Her parents had died when she was a child, and she lived alone in a small room not far from her stall. No electricity, no running water, just her and her dreams. One afternoon, as she wiped her bench clean, her friend Mama Titi passed by. "Esther," she said, "why are you always smiling when you're struggling like the rest of us?" Esther smiled again and replied, "Because crying won't put food in my pot." Mama Titi laughed and walked away, but her words lingered in Esther's heart. It was true she had little, yet she always gave something, even when she had nothing. She didn't know her life was about to change. Each afternoon, something unusual happened at her stall. A crippled beggar would slowly roll in from the corner of the road, pushing his old wheelchair with tired hands. The wheels made a rough sound as they moved. Creak, creak, creak. People would laugh or turn away in disgust. "Look at this dirty man again," one boy said. His legs were wrapped in old bandages. His shorts were torn. His face was covered in dust, and his eyes were heavy with weariness. Some said he smelled. Others called him mad. But Esther never looked away. She called him Papa J that afternoon. As the sun blazed above, Papa J stopped beside her shop. "You're here again, Papa J," she said softly. "You didn't eat yesterday." Papa J looked down, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was too weak to come," he said. "I haven't eaten in 2 days." Esther looked at her table. Only one plate of beans and yam remained. It was the food she had saved for herself. She paused briefly, then without a word, picked up the plate and set it before him. "Here, eat," she said. Papa J stared at the plate, then at her. "You're giving me your last plate again?" Esther nodded. "I can always cook more when I get home." His hands trembled as he took the spoon. His eyes filled with water, but he didn't cry. He simply bent his head and ate slowly. People passing by watched them. "Esther, why do you always feed that beggar?" a woman asked. "If I were the one in that wheelchair," Esther replied, "wouldn't I want someone to care for me too?" Papa J came every day, yet he never begged with his mouth. He never stretched out his hand or called for help. He just sat quietly beside Esther's stall, head down, hands resting on his legs. His wheelchair looked like it might collapse at any moment. But while others ignored him, Esther always brought him food, hot rice, yam, or beans, and a smile to go with it. One hot afternoon, after serving 2 schoolboys, she noticed Papa J in his usual spot. His legs were still wrapped, his shirt even more tattered. She scooped a plate of jollof rice, added 2 small pieces of meat, and walked to him. "Papa J," she said gently, "your food is ready." He looked up slowly. His tired eyes softened when he saw her. "You always remember me." "Even if the world forgets you," she said, placing the plate beside him. "I won't." Just then, a sleek black car pulled up in front of her shop. A man stepped out, tall, well-dressed, with polished shoes and a commanding presence. Esther quickly wiped her hands on her apron. "Good afternoon, sir," she greeted. "Good afternoon," he replied, but his eyes weren't on her. He was staring at Papa J. He didn't blink, just stared. Papa J, still eating, suddenly paused. The man stepped closer, tilting his head as though trying to recall something. Then he turned to Esther. "1 plate of jollof rice. Add meat," he said. She quickly served him, but noticed the man glance back at Papa J again. His eyes now held uncertainty. Without another word, he got into the car and drove away. The next morning, Esther cleaned her stall and waited. "Any moment now," she whispered. "Papa J will roll in." But hours passed and no wheelchair. "No Papa J," she asked Mama Titi, the water seller, the bike man, but no one had seen him at BY the second day. Esther couldn't smile anymore. Her food lost its flavor. She served customers with a heavy heart. That night, she sat alone, holding the last plate she had served him. "He never misses a day," she whispered. "Not even when it rains. Not even when he's sick." By the fourth day, worry had turned into fear. Then a black car returned. A well-dressed man stepped out and handed her a brown envelope. "What is this?" Esther asked. "Read it, and don't tell anyone." The man said before leaving. Inside was a note. "Come to Green Hill Hotel by 4 p.m. Don't tell anyone. From a friend." Esther had never been to a hotel before, but she knew she had to go at BY 3:30 p.m. She locked her shop, whispered a prayer, and took a tricycle to Green Hill Hotel. The building was tall, clean, and shining. Security men stood at the gate. "Who are you here to see?" one asked. Esther showed the letter. "Oh, you're Esther. Someone's waiting for you inside." A man in a black suit led her through a long corridor and stopped at a tall wooden door. "Someone is waiting inside," he said. "You're safe." With a deep breath, she opened the door and froze. There, in the middle of the room, sat Papa J. But he looked different. His hair was neat, his face clean and fresh. He wore a crisp white shirt with gold buttons. A shining wristwatch sparkled on his wrist. His wheelchair gleamed like it was brand new. Esther's hands trembled. "Papa J," she gasped. The man smiled. "Esther, come in." She stepped forward slowly. "Is it really you?" she asked. "Yes," he said gently. "But my name is not Papa J. My real name is Chief George. I am a billionaire." Esther's mouth dropped open. Chief George continued. "I own companies. I built schools, hospitals, and homes. But I grew tired of fake kindness. I wanted to meet someone who helps without expecting anything." He looked at her kindly. "You gave me food, with joy, without asking for anything. You never looked away. That's why you're here. Every year, I find 10 people who show true kindness, and I help them become millionaires. Because people like you can change the world." Esther was still in shock. But then Chief George placed his hands on the arms of the wheelchair and stood up. Her eyes widened. You can walk?" He nodded. "Yes, Esther, I can walk. And today, I will help you rise too." "Yes," he said softly, "I can walk." Esther leaned back, still staring at him like she had seen a ghost. "But why sit in a wheelchair all this time?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He looked into her eyes with a calm expression and replied, "I wanted to see if anyone would care for me, even when I looked broken. I wanted to know who truly had a good heart." Esther's lips began to tremble. Her eyes welled up. A tear slid down her cheek. "I didn't help you because I wanted anything," she whispered. "I didn't even know you were rich. I just felt it was the right thing to do." Chief George smiled warmly and stepped closer. "That's exactly why I chose you." For a moment, silence hung in the air as he looked at her with deep kindness. Then he said, "Esther, follow me. There's a place I want to show you." She looked up, surprised. "A place?" "Yes," he replied with a soft smile. "It's part of your reward. You have a good heart, and people like you deserve good things." Esther stood slowly, her heart pounding. "Okay," she said, her voice steady but uncertain. Chief George opened the door, and Esther followed him into the hallway. 2 men in black suits stood outside, waiting. They nodded respectfully at Chief George and walked behind them as they moved. Esther looked around in disbelief. Everything felt like a dream she didn't want to wake from. Outside, her mouth fell open in awe. 5 black SUVs gleamed in the sunlight, lined up like a royal convoy. Large men in suits stood beside them, alert and professional. Chief George walked to the first SUV. A guard opened the door for him. He turned and looked at Esther. "Come in," he said. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The door shut gently behind her, and the other SUVs began to move in formation. The convoy glided out of the hotel gates like a scene from a movie. Esther sat in silence, her heart racing. Where was he taking her? And what was he about to show her? As the cars cruised through Lagos, she sat beside Chief George, glancing out the window at the busy streets, shops, and people. But her mind was spinning with questions. After about 30 minutes, they turned into a calm, clean road. The buildings here looked fresh, modern, glass walls, elegant signs, and smooth white paint. Then the car stopped. Chief George stepped out. A guard opened Esther's door. "Come," he said, smiling. Esther's eyes widened as she stepped out. In front of her stood a magnificent building. Not just any shop, but a luxurious multi-million naira restaurant. It towered alone, wrapped in glass from top to bottom. The walls shimmered white like marble. The doors sparkled with gold handles, and colorful flowers framed the entrance. Esther's breath caught in her throat, but what shocked her the most was a signboard above the entrance. It read, "Esther's Place, home of sweet meals." She stepped back, staring in disbelief. Is this real?" she asked, her voice cracking. Chief George nodded. "Yes, it's yours." "Mine?" she whispered. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a bunch of keys, and handed them to her. "Go inside," he said, pointing to the golden doors. Her hands trembling, Esther took the keys and slowly walked to the door. She unlocked it and pushed it open. What she saw inside made her cover her mouth with both hands. The floor gleamed like glass. Soft, elegant chairs were arranged around shining tables. The ceiling lights sparkled like stars. The air was fresh and fragrant. Every detail was perfect. Behind the dining area was a large, modern kitchen, gas cookers, spotless pots, deep freezers, and brand new uniforms neatly arranged for staff. Esther turned to Chief George, tears rolling down her cheeks. "You bought all this for me?" He walked beside her and nodded gently. "Yes, you gave me food when you had barely enough for yourself. You fed me with love, not pity. Now, I want to give you a place where kings and queens will come to eat. Esther, you will never suffer again." Esther fell to her knees. She buried her face in her hands and wept, but these were tears of joy. "I don't know what to say," she sobbed. "You don't need to say anything," Chief George replied. "Your kindness already spoke for you." From that day forward, Esther became the proud owner of one of the finest food plazas in Lagos. It was nothing like her roadside stall. This place was grand. The floor sparkled. The walls glowed with fine lights. The air smelled like peace. She no longer cooked. She didn't serve food either. Professional chefs now worked in her kitchen, wearing crisp white coats and tall hats. Waiters in smart uniforms moved gracefully, smiling as they served meals. Esther sat in her glass-walled office upstairs. Her name was on the door. Her photo hung proudly on the wall. Customers and staff alike respected her. Yet, even with the money, fame, and comfort, Esther never forgot where she came from. She never forgot Papa J. And she never forgot how kindness changed her life. One morning, her manager walked into her office. "Madam," he said, "the food truck is ready." Esther stood up with purpose. "Let's go." Outside the restaurant, a large white van waited. On the side, bold letters read, "Esther's Food Love, Feeding the Hungry." Esther had started a charity. Every week, her trucks moved across the city, delivering free food to the poor, under bridges, at bus stops, in crowded markets. People lined up with smiles, children, old men, barefoot mothers. And Esther walked each one, handing them warm meals with a kind smile. "Eat well," she told them. "You are not forgotten." One of her workers whispered, "Madam, why do you do this?" Esther placed a hand on her chest and replied, "Because kindness brought me here, and I must send kindness out again." The worker nodded silently. As they stood and watched the hungry eat with joy, the sun gently lit Esther's face. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Chief George. Thank you for seeing me." Then, without saying more, she walked back to the van and drove off to the next street. Her life had changed forever, but her heart remained the same.